Okay, well, good morning, TG, middle-aged millennial, and we're coming from the Gold Coast. I have a special guest with us today. What's your name?
Something to do with... it doesn't really matter. You call me whatever you want to call me.
Well, I've done that already, but for the sake of the audience...
Dr. Cam McDonald in the house.
Dr. Cam McDonald is in the house, and we have Anne's joined. Hey, Anne. And we are going to be talking today about the field that I keep bringing up in a number of conversations, epigenetics.
Yeah.
Right? So give us your background, Cam, all the pieces of paper that you've... as a doctor, I'd imagine you must be super qualified.
Well, so first thing is, if you're on a plane and someone has a heart attack, I'm not the kind of doctor that you want to call.
No, you're a bit more parasympathetic or
Well, I can maybe assess as to why the heart attack occurred, but I'm not so good at fixing it.
Fixing it at the end when it's too bloody late.
Not a medical doctor.
Right.
A PhD. And so I started out trying to be as social as possible.
Right.
Had my first 2 years, skipped as many classes as I could in ex-phys, because I really like the idea of sports, and it was exercise and sports science. So I went, that sounds like me. I love sports.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that you can really improve diabetes, and at this point I believe you could fix diabetes just with exercise alone. And I said, geez, we've got to really amp this up. But it turned out that diabetes had a bit to do with food. So I finished my undergrad, which went really well, and then went on to do my Masters of Dietetics and Nutrition. So I became a dietitian at the end of that, and was trying to get as many pieces to the pie as possible as to how we could make this insulin system work better. With diabetes always being one of those conditions that I've gravitated towards.
Right.
And so halfway through, or about a year and a half through my hospital career, working with cardiac rehab and in an exercise and nutrition component, but also pulmonary rehab as well, where there's a lot of inflammation getting around, a lot of wasting. I started looking at how you could combine some anti-inflams from the nutrition point of view and combine that with anti-inflams from the exercise point of view. And so essentially took on my PhD looking at omega-3s and exercise and how that influenced breast cancer survivors, because they age 10 years after 1 year of treatment and they go into early menopause and all of their chronic disease risk pulls forward. So if we can reduce inflammation and improve health at that point in time, we prevent a lot of disease after that's not related to the breast cancer, but related to the treatment.
So this is like a side effect of the treatment, creates all these other problems.
Yeah, essentially. But at the same time, like there's always a risk reduction that rather than getting another cancer that spreads very quickly and has potential of killing you very quickly. That problem is taken care of by the chemo and radio. But obviously...
you still have stem cells that are there from the original cancer, which doesn't usually get rid of, my understanding is.
Probably today is not the day I'm going to go into
that stuff.
That's
probably a good idea. Yeah.
But I totally hear what you're saying. Essentially, that treatment, people choose it because they feel it's the best decision to choose it at that point in time.
Has that been told by the industry?
Well, yes, and often their own research, and there's not a lot of security in the other options as well. There's a lot of people with theories about, you should do this, and it definitely fixes that. But then we have another body of evidence that's very big and very strong and in our medical system. So when you're talking to someone...
Funded by the system.
It doesn't. I guess for the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about people making choices on the information that they have and what they can feel most safe in, which is what you want.
I just want to know they've got a lot of other choices from the one that gets thrown in their face.
Yeah. And I guess that's a really cool conversation
for another go.
Yeah.
I look forward to having that one with you.
And as we go forward, our treatments will become a lot more exacting, etc., etc. So, yes, some of the side effects are early menopause, extra inflammation, chronic disease being brought forward, and so we were trying to prevent that with. And what was really interesting now, I then went through a lot of private practice, seeing lots of clients from a dietetic and exercise point of view, and essentially got into this place where everyone is actually quite different, and then found this incredible science of genetics and epigenetics, which, I made a big discovery. It had been around for a long time, but it came into my field in a real way. And I actually reflected on the clients that I had, or my participant group in the breast cancer trial. And a lot of them weren't actually suited to the treatment that we were providing. It wasn't what they were designed for. Their phenotype is actually in disagreement with what we consider best recommendations for nutrition and exercise.
What's a phenotype?
That's a good question. So,
Thanks.
so phenotype is essentially all of the results of epigenetics. And so I'll give this a real simple example. Let's say you've got your genes, and your genes are always trying to respond to the environment to keep you alive, and to keep your body balanced as best it can. So let's say that you expose your genes, which is by way of hormones, like you walk into a refrigerator and you get really cold. Your genes go, oh, the hormones that I've just been receiving is telling me that it's really cold out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to conformationally change. I'm going to change the structure of my DNA so that only my cold adaptive genes are able to be read. And so that then sends out a wave of hormones and essentially makes you go into goosebumps and stands your hair up on end, which then, and shivers, it makes you shiver, which then warms your body up, because that's the response of your genes to the environment. But then you go into a sauna and you then start sweating and you're not shivering anymore, and that's because your genes have been exposed to warm, and so your hormones tell your body or tell your genes, hey, it's actually changed now, we're really hot. And so the genes go, oh God, we'll turn these cold adaptive genes off, turn them off. Turn the warm adaptive genes on, and so you start sweating and you stop shivering. And so your phenotype is essentially the result of your genes interacting with the environment.
Wow, and so then they can flip on a coin. Like, is it going to be hot or cold? You're switching on, switching off genes at that moment.
In all moments.
Wow.
Some genes are almost hardwired when they turn on. Other genes flip on and off in a moment. And this is the really important thing about epigenetics. And if we have a mother who smokes during pregnancy, for the next 3 generations, a conformational change will happen in the genetic code of her body, her child's body, and if it's a female child, the egg's already in that fetus as well for the next generation. It'll influence asthma risk for the next 3 generations.
Wow. And for them to be addictive as well to the cigarettes?
Not necessarily addictive, but just the presence of asthma.
The effect. So what that mother did in her life is being transmitted through epigenetically to the child.
Exactly.
Well,
because they're in the same environment. So it's responding to the environment.
Right.
And so that's one type of epigenetic change that can hold for a number of generations. And where that came from was where the research started was they looked at old harvesting records and lifespan records of people back in the mid 1800s. And they found that people who had a really big harvest, the next 3 generations, or a series of harvests where they had abundance in their food, they would live shorter lives and they'd be shorter in stature. And then what they found is people who had very lean harvests through a period of their lives, they would be taller and live longer in the next 3 generations. They'd turn on more survival genes because they were fed less.
Wow.
So that is really where we started the whole epigenetics thing. And so epigenetics isn't just that generational thing though. It's caffeine. Like I just had a green tea, which is going to switch on some dopamine genes, and it's going to switch on some noradrenaline genes in my body particularly. And so the way my body is going to express that is with high alertness and high cognition, or high cognitive speed. And that is a phenotype. It's the end result of the environment, the green tea, interacting with my genes, creating the thing that you can see, touch, feel, measure, which is, and it might even be the length of a bone through your development. So if you've got shorter femurs, we know that your epigenetic exposure to testosterone is a little bit higher. And so through your development, the length of your femur relates to hormones that you're on average exposed to more or less of. And so in this way, your phenotype of a shorter femur is related to your average gene expression over a period of years, because your bones don't just change on a dime, they change over years. So phenotype really means a lot of things. It essentially anything that we can measure: blood pressure, cholesterol, headaches, length of your bones, the amount of fat that you have, the waist circumference, all of that is a phenotype because it's the end result of your genes plus your environment.
So let me just then try and break this down. So your phenotype, so you've got your genome, which is the full set, and it could be 25,000 genes on average, for the human. Then you could have, on average, about 20% are switched on at any point in time. They're almost like software packages, perhaps?
Essentially,
And so you can be switching them on, and on average we'll be using about 5,000 of those-ish, give or take. That's the phenotype? So it's been expressed through, epigenetically, through the environmental effects.
So I guess when we're talking about phenotype, yes, you could talk about it at the level of what gene is turned on right now.
Right.
Where we talk about it, which makes it simpler to understand,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what is the end result of that gene being turned on. So,
Right,
like,
right.
let's say that
oh,
you
okay,
have,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
So,
So what I said was correct, but then to give it meaning,
Yeah.
what does it actually mean to you?
the specifics of those numbers, the 5,000 on or off.
Right.
Let's just say yes. Like let's just say that 5,000 are on at one time, but that's going to change based on your environment.
But people know that, like, there's certain ones that are switched off. Some of those switched off ones could be the mutated ones, which could be cancerous.
Exactly.
Cause cancer. You don't want those switching on.
Well, precisely, or
Right.
for a prolonged period of time.
Ah, right.
And so you might
okay.
have a hot dog because
Uh-huh.
you want to share a hot dog with your son at a
Right.
baseball game. Because
Right.
you know, if I went to New York, I'd probably have a
Right.
hot dog because that's what you
Right.
do.
Yeah.
And for a moment, it might actually make a small change in my epigenetic expression.
Uh-huh.
But then I go back to doing my exercise. You get 3,000 to 5,000 changes in your gene expression after one bout of exercise.
Right.
But if you don't then maintain that, they'll turn back off and go to lazy genes again. But if you maintain it consistently,
Right.
and that's where the software package of muscle growth,
Right.
you can keep switching on and switching on and switching on and switching on so that you have an average of those genes turning on more than they're not.
Right.
And that's what creates increased muscle growth and
Right.
increased fitness changes. Versus if you turn them off a lot and sit on a couch,
Right.
your body goes, I'm going to adapt to this environment. My fitness one
Yeah.
was adapting to, I'm out of breath, I need
Right.
to be better at oxygen.
Right.
And so it gets better at processing oxygen.
Right.
Whereas if you sit on a couch, your body goes, my body's burning too much energy. I'm sitting down, I don't need to burn as much energy. And so
Right.
it'll adapt
Right.
to getting better at sitting down. So it'll get bigger, it'll get heavier, it'll get stiffer.
Store fat.
Yeah,
or-
which makes you really, really good at sitting down.
Right.
So your body, your genes will respond based on the environment you provide.
But that's tending to kill us, right? That sort of.
But your genes don't know that.
Right.
And your genes are just going, well, this is the environment that I need to survive right now. I'm going to get really good at it.
Ah, right.
And so if you're in an environment that's supporting your body,
Right.
then your genes get really good at supporting itself.
Right.
But if you put your body into a place that creates, your body essentially compensates for that environment
Yeah.
in the best way it knows how.
Right.
For example, when someone gets very, very stressed and they've got a heavier, like a bigger phenotype,
Yeah.
they get diabetes
Right.
so that they can store more fat tissue because their modus operandi is
Right.
to help people survive,
Right.
is to look after people. So diabetes is just a very extreme way of the body adapting so that they can store more fat,
Right.
so that they can give more.
Huh.
It's just the end of the spectrum.
Interesting.
Whereas if you take that stress away,
Yep.
their body goes, I don't need to store this fat anymore, I can let
Right.
it go.
Uh-huh.
Because the survival instinct isn't there, and so their body doesn't have to go into such a dysmetabolic state,
Right.
dysfunctional state, I should
Right.
say. And so, in essence, your genes will adapt to the environment you put it in. And then, sorry.
All right. So they're making the best. They're trying to adjust for the best outcome based on the situation.
No, they all adjust for the environment that you're in right now.
Right.
And help you survive
Right.
in the way that it knows it needs to survive.
Right. So then how does it get to, okay, you switch on certain genes for a certain period, could be fatal to you. I mean, it could
Yes.
be cancer, it could be heart
Yep.
disease or something like that.
That's it. Well, the body, this is if the environment stays around,
Right.
the body goes, well, and particularly this is a stress state. So when you're in a stress state,
Yeah.
you put essential things like your health
Yeah.
on the back burner.
Right.
And you go, I've just got to get through today.
Right.
There's a cancer growing in my brain,
Yeah.
but I'm stressed.
Yeah.
I can't divert energy that way right now.
Right.
I've got to take care of my today.
Right.
And this is where if you're mentally stressed,
Yeah.
or this is, the standard thing, I've got to look after my kids,
Yeah.
I've got to look after my work,
Right.
work is really pressing me, kids are really pressing me, I feel really stressed.
Yeah.
Your immune system doesn't take care of you because it's saying, well, you just take care of survival right now because mentally you're saying this is the most important thing ever.
Right.
And so when you were talking about something that's going to kill you,
Yeah.
you are prioritizing other things mentally to mean more, and so your body won't put attention on the disease state.
Right.
And that's what stress does. It enables you to survive the moment.
The moment. So this is like a fight or flight thing. Like we're in
Exactly.
sympathetic from a heart rate variability point of view.
Exactly.
We're too much in the sympathetic zone these days. You know, corporate, and you got wife, you got digital stuff, media coming smashing. You got your boss on your case. You're constantly in that state of your mind working, and hence then there's no attention being given to the immune system.
Exactly.
Perhaps.
Perfect way to think about that
Right.
is you're at work, you've been working your butt off for the last 6 months.
Yep.
You go on holidays, you get
Yep.
sick on the second day.
Right.
So
Happens
this
every
is
time.
this is you going, I've got to put everything to the side. I've got to push through my limits. Your dopamine gets up, your cortisol gets up, which numbs pain.
Right.
Dopamine gives you reward even
Right.
though you might be in physical pain.
Yeah.
Your immune system goes, well, I'm not turning on because we've got to deal with this immediate problem.
Right.
But the fascinating thing about our brain, it's so powerful in its prefrontal cortex now that we can say, I can hold this immediate stress state for months.
Whoa.
And so then you go away on holidays, your body goes, thank you so much.
Right.
Now I'm going to take on my immune system and really ramp that up.
Right.
And so you find things to fight.
Oh my God.
You getting sick is your body fighting. It's the good sign. When you're not sick and you're stressed, that's when you're still stressed.
All right, so this is really interesting because like chronic disease accumulates over, it could be 10, 15, 20 years.
Exactly.
Right? And you don't know because you haven't had a symptom yet. Why have you not had a symptom? Because you've been in that fight and flight mode where all the genes that you switched on and epigenetically, like you said, are in that right here, now, we've got to do this, and not paying attention to, let's say, the immune system.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
And you do that for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden, you get some symptom that's punched through. So what's happening then? The immune system is knocking on the door so damn hard that it's going, hey, dude, give me some attention. I'm going to give you a severe amount of back pain right now, or kidney pain, or something like that.
Probably, it depends. So, like, the best analogy is if you're running, let's say you do an ultra marathon for 3 days.
Right.
Are you going to break down a bunch of muscle tissue? Of course you are. You're going to be breaking muscle down. But your body, your brain is going, I just need to keep going.
Right.
Because the ultra marathon goes for 3 days.
Push through.
So you break your tissue down, you break your tissue down, you break your tissue down, but you keep going. You break a leg, you break your tissue down, you keep going. And so the same thing goes for a heart attack. Your vessels might be breaking down and might be getting thinner or more clotted.
Yeah.
And in a heart attack point of view, it gets so clogged that it actually stops your heart for a moment.
Right.
Or stops the blood flow to your heart. So it's an immediate biomechanical thing. A stroke might be that you've been stressing and stressing and stressing so much and not recovered your artery that it bursts. And it's because it's just frayed like that muscle tissue in your leg that's been running ultramarathon.
Because you haven't been allowing it to do the repair work because you've been in full drive mode.
The whole time.
The hustle and grind.
Recover later.
Recover later. Don't feel that pain. We've got adrenaline and cortisol pumping through.
Exactly.
We're good.
Yep. And the same thing goes for diabetes. The thing about diabetes is it's very insidious, I think is a good word. It onsets very slowly, and you can have a blood sugar of 15, which is 3 times the healthy limit, and not feel it.
Right.
So you can be completely unaware of these symptoms, even though your body is. And then, you go and get it checked and you go, gee, this is quite bad.
Right.
So there's going to be symptoms that break through because you've got a physical breakdown. And then there will be other ones that we get checked because we've got markers for these things now. So it really just depends on the condition. Like cancer will start really killing, or, will start really becoming noticeable when you've got a tumor growing. But 1 or 2 cells, you don't even know that. And then what's 20 cells in your body?
Yeah.
But if you've got a now growth and you start feeling things and it starts disrupting metabolic function.
Right.
It's just been unchecked, and so now it's causing a symptom.
So now the machine is breaking down. Even though you're in that fight and flight mode, it's actually, you've lost a wheel off a Formula 1 race car, you've been putting the pedal to the metal to.
Yeah, still going.
Right.
Not going at your capacity.
Right. But you just lost the wheel.
You're just like, oh, no, I don't want to stop, I just got to keep going. It's like an attitude of, if I pit stopped and get a new wheel, I'm going to lose 2 minutes in the pits, but I'm going to make up hours later. Right. As opposed to, bullishly going, I've just got to keep going and not stop.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So then let's look at this from also when we start to take the gut and the biome, which is everyone, your skin. Yeah. Most of it's in the gut, and all of a sudden, it's like they say even a flea has 200,000 genes. Right. To our meager 25,000 as humans, as far as we understand them, but we have this trillion of other bits of DNA that are on us, which are bugs, if you want to call it, if you will, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. So how does that then interrelate with what do we still have then control over if we're actually symbiotically existing with all this microbiome stuff? Yeah,
well, there's a couple of things to that. Right. Number one is firstly, different people with different phenotypes. And when I talk about phenotypes in a sense, I actually mean there's categorical different bone structures that people grow. Right. And we can divide them very simply into 6 groups, more complexly into 72 groups, and then infinitely into the individual profile as well. Yeah. But with each of these 6 major categories of body shapes that we have that are based on skeletal structure, these are called health types in PH360. Right. Each of those will have a different interaction with their gut and their microbiome. So they'll have different species growing on their bodies that are optimal for them. And just like any symbiotic relationship, the host will affect the guest,
right,
and the guest will affect the host.
So they've got this interdependent relationship going on.
Exactly.
But you also got these different little bugs that are fighting each other or getting on. Or
and this is where there's a great quote. It's just coming to my mind right now, but it sums it up quite nicely. Like there's a dog, there's a wolf that represents hope and love, and there's a wolf that represents hate and fear.
Right.
Which wolf wins?
Right.
It's the one that you feed.
Huh.
And so if you feed the right bacteria for you, then those bacteria have the fuel that they need to fight. And this is the analogy is like, and you've got the crack troops that create health in your body that are going to be quite different to another person as to what's going to be healthy. And you've got, if you put the right food in, then you're fueling and giving arms to the crack troops so that they can take down the enemy. Because it's a war of attrition. It's, This is pure, like natural selection in your gut. It's like the bugs that have the most fuel and the most energy will win. But if you're eating Maccas, and then you're going to be feeding the bugs that don't have those fuels. Or that don't have those good intentions for your body. And so while they're actually not good or bad bugs, they're just bugs. But what we know is that when you eat Maccas, your gut bug changes, and it helps support. It says to your body, "This is a bad environment. We need to stress right now to protect ourselves because whatever environment we're in, I'm not nutritionally adequate. I'm getting fed the wrong kind of stuff. I need to protect myself." And so some bodies will gain fat tissue because that's the way they protect themselves. Other bodies will start increasing their energy, their anxiety levels, because the way they get out of trouble is to think their way out of trouble and run their way out of trouble. But the other body that stores fat, they get out of trouble by staying still and conserving their energy. And this is where the 6 types come in as well. So another type will go out fighting. They'll become more aggressive. They'll become more angry. Because they've been given an environment that says you're stressed. How do you deal with stress? Well, I fight my way out. So their anger increases and their tolerance decreases. And so all of that is a survival strategy. And this is where it's really important. The good-bad argument is actually not even a thing. It's about the environment that you're in right now, your body is responding to survive the best way it can in this moment right now. And so your body is always working for you. Your gut bugs are always working for you, good or bad, because they are trying to set an environment and a state of health that is going to immediately protect you. But we, in our human intellect, go, well, we want longevity because we don't want to die. And so our brain is saying, I want to live forever. But our body is responding to the moment. And so if we reverse engineer that and say, well, I want to live forever, then what state do I need to put my body in? You start putting the healthy foods in. Now, healthy foods aren't often as appetizing as bad foods, for example. And sitting on the couch is sometimes more pleasurable than going out for a big long ride or lifting some weights. But our mind goes, no, I want the long-term outcome. I want the delayed gratification. But when you're stressed, you don't have that tolerance so much. And this is where the human mind and our wants
play a big part. I mean, this is Mindful Monday that we're on right now.
But our biology is happening in the moment. And we need to be able to take that long-term vision and bring it into the moment, each moment, as many times as we can.
All right. So just on that point then, and I just want to finish off on the bug thing as we come into the mind area, which you're headed right now. So, people are taking the industry's gone on fire for probiotics. Now you see all these probiotic and kombuchas and whatever products everywhere. From what I understand, like 90-95% of those are crap, as in they don't work. You go and they get smashed by the bugs that are in your stomach anyway. So working out, and you've got these, like Viome, for example, where they're analysing, doing fecal sort of analysis on what the right bugs are for you, and hence these are your superfoods. Have you got any opinion or comment on how effective they are before we head into then the mind piece?
So with all of this, and probably the most important thing is that everybody is different. And a superfood for one can actually be not good.
Poisonous for another one, right?
And a perfect example of that is if, we see it more often than you would think, is people who are eating a bucket load of cruciferous vegetables. If they can't process that like some of the compounds in those foods,
Right.
they might actually break out in hives. They might break out in
Right.
in lower energy and fatigue.
Yeah.
And this is what the kales, the broccolis, the cabbages.
Kale's gone huge. Everybody's gone nuts on kale.
Yeah, exactly. Because their body, specifically for that pathway, with all of the other factors at play, they can't process that right now.
You can't digest it. You need like 3 stomachs to digest kale in its natural form anyway.
Well, yes.
But anyway.
But then other bodies can process it really well.
Right.
And so...
Or better than.
Well...
Not as good as a cow.
Not as well as a cow,
Right,
no.
okay.
No, I mean, and they've got a different purpose though. But also the fact that we can cook things makes us much more able to digest things.
Right.
So when we're talking about, I guess, so the superfood thing, and when we're talking about gut microbiome and things like that, ultimately the food that is right for you and right for your blood sugar control and right for your cartilage repair and right for the amount of protein that you need to recover your body will also be reflected in the foods that are best for your gut bacteria as well.
Right.
And this is where probably the problem is people will take a gut bacteria reading and say, right, this is now my health. When in fact, it's a symptom of the environment that your body's in.
Right.
And so if we know that your body is a particular phenotype, we know that it's going to work more optimally with certain gut bacteria.
Right.
And so if the foods that match your nutrigenomics and your phenotype are put into your body, the right types of fibers, the right micronutrients, the right timing of the day as to when you eat your foods, your gut goes into much greater rest, you digest better, and those nutrients not only inform the gut bacteria, but it also supports the absolute nutritional requirements of your specific body as well. Like there's no system that's separate. Right. And we think that we're treating the gut, we're fixing everything, when in fact the gut is only one element of what we're fixing. Right. If you can't actually change you can't say, oh, I want more Bacteroides today, like you can't do that. What you do is, I want more spinach today. Like the thing that you can change is the environment around the bacteria, the environment around your genes. Right. And so, and that change won't just affect your gut microbiome. Everything will change together. Right. Because you also, if you have lots of stress and lots of stress neurotransmitters, they overflow into your gut and they change your gut bacteria as well. Right. So you feed back to the bacteria from internal, not just what you put in externally from the food, but if you're really, really stressed, then your gut bacteria mirror that as well. Right. So this is where you actually have, based on the behaviors, based on your thoughts, based on your lifestyle, based on doing the things that are right for you, you change your gut bacteria. You're not sort of victim to them. Right. You've got control over that. And if you know what's right for you from a phenotype, which is essentially the work that we do, you know exactly what to put in and what ways to treat your mind, what ways to treat your body that put you into the best state that support you not only externally but internally as well. Right.
Okay. All right. So this is where I'm going to take a quick pause. And I don't know if you're watching the comments coming up. So I'm wondering, I don't know, I can see Peter on there somewhere. Are there any sort of questions that we should perhaps attend to or comments? No? All right, cool. Let us know when there is, if you don't mind. So if we move into, and this is where I've sort of looked at, I thought, we're going to go into pH 360 here and how it goes about solving this problem. But like you said, and the entry segue point in perhaps is through the mind, making decisions for that long-term picture of health versus that short-term, and you've probably got certain genes switched on that are still saying, eat more Maccas, right? And garbage food, give me more sugar. So there's certain decisions you've got to make. You could have something that says, look, here is your ideal state. We've analysed you, and pH 360 has its own way of going about that. But then you've got to take someone and start to change their behaviour, the choices that they make. So it kind of starts with the mind, and I know there's a certain amount of mind stuff that's analysed in pH 360. So what's your opinion on that?
So there's always different avenues to access. Essentially, what we're trying to achieve when we get in the mind is we're trying to create a balance of productive sympathetic and restful parasympathetic. Right. Sympathetic's not bad. It's really good for getting stuff done. Right. Parasympathetic is really, really great for resting and recovering. Right. And you need them in a balance. So it's a bit, often we're just imbalanced.
Bit of the yin and yang going on.
Of course, you need balance, but some people need more of one and less of the other naturally to be in their best state.
Depending on the situation that they're in or environmentally.
Based on their phenotype and based on their constitution, essentially. Based on what their body is made up of and the natural rhythm of their body and how it's supposed to work.
Right, okay.
So when we're getting into the mind, and I'm just sort of painting the base.
Context,
and that is what we're trying to achieve is balance within their parasympathetic versus sympathetic.
Okay.
And if we do that in a way that's optimal for their individual needs, then we're going to create excellent healing with great productivity and let them achieve what they want to achieve.
Right.
And so,
if I just interrupt for a moment. So that the people understand in general, and sympathetic, you've got your nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, and you've got sympathetic, which is that fight or flight, which we tend to be geared in today.
Getting stuff done.
Stuff done.
I've got things on my list, I've got to get them done, and I've kind of got to ignore other things while I do it.
Right.
You're in sympathetic.
Right. And it could be getting chased, it could be a fight or flight type thing.
Exactly.
It's like something, you're feeling anxious, you're running away from some fear, right? Saber-toothed tiger years 100%. Ago, which didn't happen every minute of the day, as it does today almost.
Yeah.
Versus, then the parasympathetic, what are you doing? You're asleep, or what's going on?
Not necessarily. You just your body is no longer needing. It feels safe. Essentially. It feels satisfied that it's achieved what it needs to, or has got the environment around it that there's no threat.
Right.
And so having a job not done can be a threat to some people because I need to get it done.
Oh my god! Otherwise, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
I feel scared.
And so parasympathetic can be induced for some people just by having a hug.
Right.
Because they can go, and if they actually really feel like some people are so geared to parasympathetics or to a hug that it makes them feel safe because that's the way their body connects with the world. Huh. Other people will get into parasympathetic once their job is ticked off.
Right.
And then they consciously do breathing to bring themselves into a parasympathetic state.
Right.
They don't need a hug to get it
right.
done. But even ticking a job off can create relaxation.
Right.
Other people will need
until you get the next job that comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But then if they can, it depends how they navigate that. And so then you've got someone who their body needs to move. They actually need to be put into a sympathetic state to rest.
Uh-huh.
And so you'll find, we call them the activator, or they're a much more energized, adrenal, cortisol, testosterone-driven body.
Right.
They need to exert energy.
Yeah.
They need to blow energy off.
Yeah.
And that puts them into rest.
Right.
And if they don't, they'll be fidgety and they'll be sympathetic all the time.
Right.
And so this is
someone
where
I know.
Sometimes
I know people like that.
sometimes you need to be sympathetic to get parasympathetic.
Right.
Whereas another one, we call them the guardian, and they're a much bigger body, a conservation type metabolism, holds more fat tissue.
Right.
In order to be healthy, they need to sit in parasympathetics a lot more because stress creates weight gain for them.
Right.
And then they get into sympathetic just for short periods of time, just to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. More very power players, like they just boom, we're on short period of time,
right? And
then we trudge along at a nice parasympathetic pace. So this is where that balance, essentially, sympathetic is getting stuff done.
Yep.
Parasympathetics is you feel safe.
Yep.
I've got a hug. I've got the people around me who I love.
Yep.
I've done the jobs that I need to. I can turn my brain off. I've done my exercise and now I can rest.
Right.
It could be just. I've shut down all sensory input, like a sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah.
I'm now no longer stimulated at all. For some people, just being stimulated can put them into sympathetic state, just by noise, by people around. And so them shutting off all sensory input is
what about being excited about something? Not scared, but it's like...
no, that's still sympathetic.
That's sympathetic.
But that's where it's really positive.
Right.
And this is where we talk about the distress versus eustress.
Right.
Distress is when there's a panic that sort of stays on like an anxiety almost. Eustress is like a happiness.
Right.
Your heart rate still elevates. It's still a stress. That's why if you're deliriously...
But it's a healthy stress. Is that what you're saying?
If it's prolonged, not so much.
Like right, okay, so it's still in sympathetic mode.
Deliriously happy for a period of time.
Right.
You've got all of these hormones that are keeping you not fixing things, but staying in this delirium, right?
Right.
And so you can still be tired after a laughing fit, you know?
Right.
You still have to recover after that.
Right, okay.
And so anytime you're
the stress on the system, whether you're excited and you think it's fun and I'm happy, I'm not scared of something, that's still a stress on the system.
It's an elevation. And this is why sympathetic's not bad.
Right.
It's really productive.
But too much of it.
It's about the balance, exactly. Right. Exercise, as soon as you start exercising, you are putting your body into stress.
Right.
It's the recovery that makes exercise good.
Right.
You can run, like if exercise was good for you and it was non-stressful,
you
would run for your whole
Forever.
life and
Yeah.
never break down.
Right, right.
But it's stressful.
Yeah.
It breaks muscle
So
tissue.
you've got this oscillation sort of
Yeah.
happening where you're flicking between the two.
That's right.
Kind of thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
But we've been too heavy, it seems, on the left-hand sympathetic side of
Very much
excitement or fear, excitement or eustress, distress, whatever. We've been, as a human race, we've been
Yes.
too far over there, yeah?
that's right, exactly.
Okay. All right.
And so then how we navigate that
Yeah.
is there's always going to be a couple of different avenues that we can take. And I'll give an example where this is an example from a diplomat in our grouping.
Yeah.
So and that's the ecto and endo combination skeletally.
Yeah.
And the way their system works is they can be so their mental stress may
Yeah.
come from being rushed.
Right.
Okay, if they feel rushed, they get really anxious.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get so stubborn they just say, "No, I'm not doing anything." Like someone coming home and saying, like they've got their whole night plan nice and peaceful. They go, "Oh, let's go out tonight," and they go, "Oh, it ruins my plan. Nah, I'm not going out."
Right.
So well, they like things to be like have lots of time and space. They like things to be on their schedule. They like to understand what's coming so that they can allocate their energy accordingly.
Okay.
And they find that very calming. Okay.
Right.
So when it comes to change and helping people change their behavior,
Yeah.
one way of relaxing their mind
Yeah.
is by saying, you know what, this is really good for you. Like let's say for that person, it's actually having 3 meals a day,
Yeah.
not 5, not 6,
Right.
and it's waking up a bit later
Right.
in the like they're a night owl.
Yeah.
So you would, and often the biggest battle is I can't train later in the day, even though their body's going to respond 3 or 4 times better if they do.
Yeah.
I can't train later in the day because of X, Y, Z. And so time and space, they're being pressured to change in that moment. And
Right.
they like things to be scheduled
Yeah.
and things to be mapped.
Right.
And so a way of navigating their mindfulness is to say, let's blow the timeline right out. So in the next 6 months, could we plan an afternoon training session?
Right.
And they go, oh, geez, with that much time and space, I can relax.
That much
into
runway, I'm good.
Exactly. That's
Right.
good. So yeah, of course. You say,
Yeah.
well, when do you think we could? Oh, probably in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
But if you said, let's change this in the next 2 weeks,
Right.
that immediacy would have stamped on their time and space.
Right.
And they would have said no.
They're in a panic mode, sympathetic.
Exactly.
Right.
But because they can map it and they relax into that space,
Yeah.
they can then become more mindful.
Right.
Because being rushed puts them into sympathetic.
Right.
And when you're sympathetic, you can't often create as well.
Right.
And so being creative
Right.
and being adaptable.
Because you're in survival mode.
Exactly.
Everything else is shutting down.
Tunnel vision.
No time for creativity
Let's do
apart from
this.
survival. But yeah.
And so their basis is that they have a very sensitive serotonin balance in their mind.
Right.
And so they
What
need
does serotonin do?
serotonin's a happiness reward hormone essentially.
Yeah.
And serotonin's the thing you get at the end of doing something good.
Right.
So they want to make sure that they're always going to get serotonin at the end of the thing that they choose to do. That's why they'll ruminate on decisions for so long.
Right.
Because they really need to make sure that they're going to get a win out of this.
Well, how does that compare with dopamine, for example?
So dopamine, serotonin is the end game of reward.
Right.
It's what you get at the end of achievement.
Right.
Dopamine is the thing that fuels your motivation.
Right.
So dopamine, like perfect example,
Yeah.
they took humans,
Yeah.
they put them into sweatsuits to make them really hot.
Uh-huh.
And what the body naturally does is after a period of time of exercising, the body temperature will raise.
Yeah.
Serotonin floods through the body to say, we've achieved, now you can calm. Serotonin's calming as well.
Right.
So it's trying to stop the exercise,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Whereas what they then did is they gave a bunch of them dopamine reuptake inhibitors, which
Right.
is essentially flooding their brain with dopamine,
Right.
which says, whatever you're doing right now, I will stop all other pain so you can keep doing it.
Ah.
So dopamine is the act of chasing something.
Right.
Serotonin is the reward afterwards.
Ah.
And what happened to these guys is they exercised right through their core body temperature safety parameters.
Right.
They were going towards hyperthermia. In
Right.
fact, some of them were
Right.
feeling amazing because their brain
And
was...
so dopamine up.
Yep.
To motivate and forget everything else.
Serotonin was high as well.
Right.
But obviously
Right.
serotonin
So getting
crashed
there.
after that as well because they feel
Right.
terrible.
Right.
And so this is where a dopamine-driven brain, which is a different type of brain,
Right.
will be chasing the big vision
Yeah.
that they won't ever really achieve, may not achieve.
Right. They're never satisfied.
But what that vision does is it creates so much dopamine in their brains, like I can push myself and
Right.
not feel it because
Right.
the dopamine is driving me
Trying to
towards
get towards
that.
it.
If I finally get it, that's when I get my
The
serotonin.
serotonin.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so this body,
Yeah.
in order to get them mindful
Yeah.
to change behavior, we need to make sure that they've got all the information so that they can make a good decision.
Right.
We need to make sure they've got time and space so they've got time to make their mind up and know that this is a good decision.
Right.
But then, If that angle's not working and they still don't want to make a decision, we can actually work on their serotonin through their gut and make their gut a lot healthier, which is where we make 90% of our serotonin.
Right.
And so if they don't want to change here,
yeah.
we might say, well, yeah, actually I know where some of these things can be fixed. Let's just change a couple of things with your food.
Right.
And let's get that happening, like the timing of your food, something really simple.
Yeah.
That then floods their brain with serotonin, which makes them more likely to change behaviours.
So you've actually gone and you're using diet to then change, obviously, the hormone levels and the decision-making processes in the brain, etc. Okay, this is really interesting.
But that obviously changes for different people. And that obviously I'm giving one example.
Right.
And it's not going to apply to everyone.
Right.
And obviously we don't have time to go through all of them in that detail today.
Sure.
But that's one example of how you can attack not just the mind.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thing to that as well. This body responds heavily to negative ionization and natural rainforest.
Right.
Things like that.
Huh.
And so you could put them into the forest
yeah.
and have the same coaching session with them.
Right.
And they would be much more amenable to change.
Because the environment they've been put in from a physical...
puts them into a parasympathetic state.
Wow.
Because their body feels safe in that environment. And, geez, I actually feel better and more optimistic, which is serotonin, optimism.
Right.
I feel better to make a decision now.
Okay, so this is coming to a really good juncture around optimizing the individual.
Yeah.
And this is why I want to see how PH360 leans into this to support. And there was a question or a comment.
How is the phenotype determined?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Right, okay.
So the way we determine phenotype, over the last 20 years, we've assessed 20,000 people.
Yeah.
We've had a look at a very detailed understanding of their anthropometry.
Right.
So, like,
what's that?
Anthropometry is the size and shape of body.
Right.
And so, and then they used that data with a very extensive medical questionnaire.
Right.
Which is now available on the web, which you can do yourself.
Right.
And essentially what happens is they then took those measures and measured hormones and bloods and genes and things like that and said, if we can do this in a way that's affordable and accessible, how can we do it?
Yeah.
And so they used a huge number of people to essentially drive a data set that when we measure the phenotype, we can also reverse engineer the genotype. We can also reverse engineer sort of some of the biometrics of hormones and things like that from their phenotype. So it's a very complex data set that we have and the way we've analysed information, but it's been through just seeing where the data fell over many, many thousands of people and confirming changes the whole way through. So this has been a project for a long time now.
So and I've sort of done the survey, you measure up and there's a whole lot of ratios, it works out therefore your phenotype.
That's right.
And then it can reverse engineer your full kind of genome.
They've mapped the whole genome to the phenotype questions.
That's crazy.
And in future, you'll actually be able to drop your genome in as well to add a greater level of specificity.
Right.
But even right now...
That's going to be a DNA test though, probably.
It can be.
Like saliva or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even right now, our understanding of phenotype, the correlations that we have, like in order to get a body, with a certain size and shape, there has to be a certain hormonal influence. There has to be a certain genetic influence. There has to be a certain environmental influence that pushes you to a particular size and shape body.
Wow.
There has to be.
Wow.
And so what we've just found is that by reverse engineering that size and shape, we actually understand what's happening embryologically. What's happening because a lot of your growth trajectory is starting in the embryo. And this is essentially...
this is the embryology part.
Exactly.
Right?
And we run medical courses on this. We run 6-week courses on this for health professionals. Without going into detail, essentially we're reverse engineering embryological information.
Yeah.
And we're also genetic information as well from the phenotype. And we know that, like hair and eye colour, if you've got red hair and green eyes, we know you've got the MC1R variant. Like it's a phenotype of a genotype. That's what happens.
Right.
And we know that phenotype, red hair and green eyes, is designed for 90% cloud cover.
Right.
Because that's where those genes developed
Northern Europe,
exactly.
Yeah.
We also know that they're more likely to get melanoma in an environment like Australia.
Right.
We also know that they're more likely to have issues with their VDR genes as well.
Right.
And so one phenotype speaks to genotype, speaks to disease risk. And this is where this science is going. Genotype is excellent, but the phenotype actually tells us what's been turned on.
Okay, so we've got genome, which is the full set.
Yeah.
Then you've got genotype, then you've got phenotype?
So the genotype is the full set.
It's the full set, right?
Yeah, it's the description of your DNA. Exactly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's your
Right.
genotype.
And once again, if you looked at them, for the layman, I mean, each of your genes are like software packages that you load and unload based on the epigenetic or environmental factors.
Exactly, yeah. So epigenetics just refers to everything that's happening around the genes, which changes the shape, changes what's red, what's not red.
Right.
A gene that's not red isn't active, so you may as well not have it if it never turns on.
Yeah.
So this is where you measure your genes, and they're good, but if they're not turned on, you don't have to treat it.
Right.
And so this is where the phenotype, when you measure the phenotype, we know what's turned on.
Right.
Because your phenotype is your gene expression.
Right. Okay.
And this is where, your skeletal growth, which is probably one of the most important classifications within our data set, it tells us epigenetically what happened embryologically, but also the environment of your development.
Right.
So you end up with very long femurs.
Right.
We know that you've been exposed to different hormones than someone with very short femurs.
Right.
We know if you've got a big skull, you've got different growth hormone levels to someone with a small skull.
Right.
And so that also has incredible correlations to how each of your internal organs are growing, because everything is growing together.
Okay.
You can't have a huge hormonal influence just affect your skull.
Yeah.
It influences everything.
Right.
And so this is where if you've got floods of testosterone coming through your body, a bit higher than the person next to you, it's going to influence your femur length.
Right.
It's going to influence the way you put on muscle.
Yeah.
It's also going to influence your brain, because you don't need to look at someone on steroids to know that their brain acts differently with a different hormonal environment.
Right.
And so essentially your developmental phenotype, which is your skeletal structure, tells us about what does your body determine determine as normal.
Right.
Because if you've been flooded with testosterone at a greater level than some other people, normal for you is having testosterone.
Right.
And so you're going to be more competitive because that creates testosterone. You're going to be more aggressive because that creates testosterone. You're going to be more likely to drive forward and push because there's more testosterone in that. You're searching for the thing that you've been exposed to your whole life.
Right.
Whereas someone who's exposed to more prolactin will actually hold more fat tissue. They'll have bigger bones.
So prolactin
is a nurturing hormone.
Nurturing, so procreation.
Helps produce breast milk, prolactation.
Right, okay.
And so if you've got more of that, it will help you gain weight.
Yeah.
And it will also make your brain more selfless.
Right.
It makes your brain want to give, like breastfeeding is, I'm going to give you all of my food.
Right.
And I'm going to wipe your ass in return.
Right.
I'm going to give with no expectation of receiving.
Okay.
And so prolactin, if you're exposed to lots of that, as you age, which some people are, which gives them a bigger body, that holds more fat tissue, able to give more without costing themselves as much, you'll find that that body gravitates towards people. You'll find that they need to give. And you only need to find a mum who's been heavy their whole life, who is the most dedicated wife, the most dedicated mother. They've got a pantry that just seems to create food.
Right.
There's always enough food for everyone. They're inviting everyone around. They seem to be tireless with their energy. It's completely service-based.
Yeah.
They have a huge amount of prolactin that they need to feel to be normal.
Right.
And so by nurturing, they feel it.
Right.
Whereas someone else who's on the other end of that, the dopamine, which is the crusader we call them,
right.
they need more dopamine to feel normal.
Right.
And so dopamine is a self-serving hormone of
the motivation hormone.
Yeah, I'm carrying out my mission.
Right, carrying out my mission. Okay.
Versus, and as your dopamine increases, your prolactin drops. So as you care more about your mission, you care less about other people's mission.
Right.
Unless, of course, you make your mission about other people's missions.
Right.
In which case,
it coincides, but for different reasons.
That's where we get synergy.
Right.
So, and so this is where anyone can be anything.
Yep.
But there is a biological driver to why we do things.
Right.
And how we create safety for that body, just to bring it back to mindfulness.
Yep.
How we create that parasympathetic state is by understanding the drivers of the body.
Yeah.
If we put the environment around that body that makes it feel normal, then it feels safe.
Right.
Versus if we give someone who's very dopamine driven, we put them in a child rearing capacity.
Right.
Where they get given the instruction, you just have to care for this person, and it's all about them, and it's not about you at all. And every time you think about you, you've got to stop that thought process.
Right. Yeah.
If we do that to that person, they'll feel completely incongruent with why they're doing it. They go, well, no, I need to get something out of this. In fact, they would go, right, I'm going to get epic at this. I'm going to be an awesome carer. So they get the dopamine in that serving
because
state.
they've set that goal to be motivated towards. And that needs to connect to that greater, higher purpose. They need to make that connection too, I guess.
Yes, they do,
Right.
for sure.
They
Well,
have to be driven.
they will naturally do it,
Right.
or they'll be very frustrated.
Right, yeah.
Whereas
It's like, what am I doing this for?
You put a prolactin person in that environment, they don't even think twice about serving.
Oh my
that
God, they
person.
need help.
But that's serving them. Yeah.
Right.
And if they were to be told, you've got to hit these KPIs and you've got to do this with your performance, and it doesn't matter about the kid,
Right.
it just matters that you get this stuff done.
Right.
It's not congruent for them because
Right.
it's like, well, no, I'm about the kid.
Right, because okay, cool.
Yeah.
So as a crusader will go, well, I help one of them. What about all these others we've got a problem with here? We need to solve this larger problem, which connects to a higher level purpose.
Yep.
Okay, I'm in for doing that.
Yeah,
but not
for
thinking
sure.
there's just one. Can some nurse? Can you?
Well, potentially, unless the mission is one person.
Right.
Okay. But then what a crusader would do in a typical fashion would be, I've got these KPIs to meet,
Right.
and it doesn't matter seriously what the kid. I'll take the shortcut
Okay.
to get this KPI.
Right.
If they were really brutal,
Right.
like full dopamine, I'm just going to hit these KPIs.
Right.
Irrespective of how everything else goes, because
Right.
this KPI is
Collateral
my goal.
damage along the way.
Whereas
Right.
if the mission was, this kid needs to show signs of genuine, authentic happiness defined by these categories,
Right.
then that's when they would put that focus on making sure the kid is happy, because the KPIs now relate to something that's
Right.
kid focused. If
Okay.
that makes sense. So
All right.
we're going to extremes here as
Yeah.
well.
All right.
And the real summation of this is people are different in how they're driven.
Yeah.
And if we can recognize that and provide the right environment around them, for some people it's the right way to think about things. For some people it's the getting out into nature.
Yep.
For some people it's doing the right amount of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
For some people it's having the right people around so they can nurture them.
Right.
If we're satisfying the person on what their main driver is, then we'll create that safety and that
Right.
parasympathetic state,
Right.
which then puts them into a state of rest and healing.
Yeah.
And often we are distracted by what society thinks that we should be doing,
Yeah.
and that is not individual, because we have a generic understanding that everyone should be doing a certain thing.
So this is really interesting, right? And I think this is where we have a big challenge today, where people are your influences are grown up by family, friends, the environment that you're brought up in, and you'll make decisions based on that influence and programming versus what could be naturally your state based on, for example, these health types
Oh, exactly.
that you just mentioned, right?
Yeah, we've seen this with people from like an
Because
individual.
that can cause distress enough to get sick and get chronic disease.
Massive distress, and,
Right.
and that's why we're working with parents and schools to do this stuff as well.
Okay.
And even an example from my parenting,
Yeah.
I've got a 4-year-old, and he's
Yeah.
a full-on risk taker.
Right.
He's in between a risk taker and a socializer,
Right.
and so everything has to be fun for him.
Okay.
Versus for my brain, when I was his age, I liked achieving things in a linear way.
Right.
Yes, I achieved this, great, I'm good at this. Yes,
Yeah.
I achieved this, yes, okay, I'm good at this.
Right.
Whereas he just wants to have fun with no real purpose.
Okay.
And so I need to understand that me putting my intentions...
Because you're a crusader.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
I'm a crusader.
Yeah.
And so if I try and make him a crusader,
Yeah.
he actually bucks it and just breaks rules,
Right.
because that's not his mode.
Yeah.
And I was teaching him to swim, and I said,
Right.
okay, we're going to do this first,
Yeah.
and then this first,
Right.
and then this first.
Yeah.
And none of it worked
Right.
until I just said, what does this person need? What
Right.
does he need? Fun.
Fun.
So I just started throwing him up and down in the pool.
Right.
Then I dropped him,
Yeah.
and he went into the pool.
Right.
He shot up and said, again.
Right.
And then in 2 days, he
Yeah.
didn't even want to touch the water before that.
Right.
In 2 days, he swam across the pool by himself.
There we go.
I didn't give him any instruction on what he
You
needed to
made
do.
it fun.
And he just went all in, because that's what his body does. He doesn't
Right.
do linearity and boring.
Right.
But I would be there stepwise, so I
Right.
had to take my brain off and think,
Yeah.
what does this person need?
There we go.
And we see this in work, we see this in coaching.
Yeah.
And this is, if you're trying to help people change behaviours and you're trying to do it your way, like
Yeah.
us crusaders, like I'm doing right now, I'm delivering heaps of information,
Right.
which I think is valuable.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's just sitting here and connecting about nothing to do with the science.
Right.
And from that relationship, they go, my God, I love this environment.
Uh-huh.
What do I need to do next? And you go, just this tomorrow. Oh, no problem.
Right.
Because their cup is full from the socializing.
Right.
Whereas our cup is full from information.
Right.
Whereas another cup is full from challenge.
Right.
And so when we're talking about mind and mindfulness and what's going to help people change behaviors,
Yeah.
we need to understand, who is this person? Who am I?
In their natural form.
Because I have to set a rule in my brain. I need to be fun
Right. Right.
for my son.
Right.
And so
you've had to make a conscious
because it's not my
awareness.
natural state.
Right, it's not your
Yeah.
natural state to flow automatically. You've got to think about it.
Yeah.
So it's always that conscious,
And
competent
and
state.
plan fun in a way that feels spontaneous to him.
Right.
Because he wants spontaneous fun.
Right. So you had to think about it.
Yeah, big time. Because that's what a crusader does. They
Right,
think and strategize through
Right.
everything.
Okay.
Whereas connectors are very much, which is what my son is very much in the moment. The only things that happen, the only thing that matters right now is this moment.
Right.
And this is fun right now.
Right.
And I don't care about your future vision for me as a child or an adult.
Yep.
I only care about eating this mud right now because it's fun.
Right. Okay.
And then I'm going to throw it at you because that's also fun.
Right. Okay.
And so it's actually taking my brain off and actually just allowing thoughts to not be classified and just stay in a very flowing state with him, which is incredible as an exercise for my mind because I don't do it that often because it's not my natural state. So this is where the whole spectrum from coaching people, setting up the right environment, understanding yourself, it extends from all the way down to schooling and parenting as well, which is what our vision is to change this generation so that we're not with this chronic disease in 30 years.
Right.
So and we need to understand the person and ourselves and how we're going to interact to do that.
Interesting. All right. In the way that we've got another 5 or 10 minutes, but the way that PH360 handles that, like there's these broad categories of 6 health types.
Yeah.
I think based on the
skeletal structure, which is essentially a mark of their embryology. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And things like some amazing bits of science around the Fibonacci ratios and so on.
Yeah, it's got some good correlations there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so you have these types, but then there's a whole lot of other stuff like there's the chronobiology, there's the embryology, there's the. So how do these things kind of layer in? Because like 6 types, and some people will go, dude, there's not 6 types of people on the planet.
Exactly.
So how does that all come into it and make it more unique and precision-like for each of the individuals around food, exercise, and things like that?
Sure. So essentially every profile is completely unique. There's 10,000 correlates, not 6, that are coming into everyone's profile.
Right.
Right now we're coming from a model where everyone is the same.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is to say everyone is different.
Right.
But instead of saying there's 7.5 billion people that we now need to define, because no one's going to be able to get their brain around that, people can get their brain around 6 as a starting point.
Right, okay.
So in 5 years, we won't be talking about 6, we'll be talking about at least 360 as a starting point.
Right.
But right now we're talking about 6.
Huh.
But even within these 6, every single person is unique within that health type. So,
so they're general categories of 6 to begin with, so we can manage it.
Which also speak to the general way and size and shape of how this body has developed.
Right.
So with this categorical...
Emphasis on the word general.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's these 6 general developmental models or developmental trajectories that they can take.
Right.
Speak to their physiology. So people within the same health type will have a lot of commonalities with their physiology.
Right.
So for example, the chronobiology is how your body interacts with time.
Right. Like circadian rhythms.
Circadian rhythms, exactly. Right. And so, you put people into shift work, you increase their cancer risk by 30%. You increase their risk of premature death by 30% because they're outside of their normal circadian rhythm.
Wow.
So your chronobiology is probably one of the most important things you can consider.
Is that right?
At least it's been 80% of my results since taking it on. The food has a lot to do with it. The exercise has a lot to do with it. But when you do these things matter.
Seriously, so that has that much impact?
That much impact. And I would...
You've experienced this personally?
Personally, my flow is far greater when I work to my neurotransmitter balance throughout the day.
Right.
But I would say the people who are night owls, who are being forced to live in an early bird society, which is what we are.
So they've been conditioned. May not be their natural state, but they've been conditioned to do so?
They have been definitely conditioned, begrudgingly. Right. Some of them even tell themselves they love it.
Right.
But their physiology is saying, I'm not designed for this. And this is where chronobiology it's not just a science that we add in, it's a science that's already there. Yeah. So diplomats and guardians, for example, have a delayed cortisol response in the morning. So they don't get the big burst of cortisol first thing in the morning. Right. Because their night owlness actually uses those catecholamines or those stress hormones for later in the day to work later and have that attention later. Wow. And they don't. And if you make them stress first thing in the morning, they collapse early and they go, "Yeah, I'm an early bird because I'm really tired at night." Right. You chill their morning out and make their cortisol act when it's supposed to. Right. And what happens to their body is that they start feeling like a night owl and waking up more refreshed and get more done. Whereas you have the early bird, and this is a body that is very tolerant of stress hormones in the morning, they naturally get a good cortisol rise in the morning.
Like Crusader?
Crusader and Activator are more this type. Right. And so they deal with this high level of cortisol really well because it's their natural state. Right. And they can hold it and then they go to rest in the afternoon,
Right.
and they wake up refreshed. And
Right.
so chronobiology is not just a thing that's kind of been layered in.
Yeah.
It's a thing that's there,
Right.
because the systems
It's
are all
real.
working together.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
okay.
so and then there's a number of other things to that, but ultimately there's your light dark cycle,
Yep.
and its interplay with your peripheral clocks, which are, you know, when your gastrointestinal tract is fired up and digesting,
Right.
when your liver is doing things, when your pancreas is doing things, when
Yeah.
your thyroid is doing things.
Got
Each individual has a specific time when it's better for their organ to be doing a certain thing throughout the day
it. Right.
in relation to the sun.
Uh-huh.
So it gets quite complex after this,
Right.
but it's in short term.
How many layers are there?
There's 15 layers of
15
science.
layers of science. So you've
Yeah.
got that 6 health types.
6 health types, which is anthropometry.
Right, anthropometry, right.
And then we're looking
you've
at
got
chronobiology, embryology, nutrigenomics, exercise physiology, and genomics. Essentially, we've got molecular biology, endocrinology, semiotics, which is signs and symptoms.
right.
Epigenetics is one, phenotypology is another, and then even genetic lineage, geomedicine as well. So, you know, this is, you know,
Wow.
Australians, Caucasian Australian being out in Australia right now.
Yeah.
Melanoma risk is through the roof.
Right.
Because 200 years ago, we
Yeah.
hadn't even been exposed to this type of cloud cover,
Right.
or lack of cloud
Lack of
cover.
cloud cover,
Our
yeah.
genes were developed for Northern Europe.
Right.
And so our adaptation is nowhere near what it needs to be.
Right.
So that
Because
geomedicine...
we've moved location where we
100%.
live, which is also another factor in
Exactly.
all this, right?
So that's a geomedicine component.
Right.
But then if you go to the Antarctic and stay
Yeah.
there for 6 months, your body changes completely.
Right.
Because you're dealing with a different location.
Right.
And a different temperature.
Right.
Versus if you go to...
So my skin's going to go all white and pale because I'm not getting any sun.
Exactly.
But it needs it because it's trying to suck up a whole lot more, I don't know, vitamin D, what it
Well,
can get
no,
changed
it's
on something. Or...
the melan, like, you know, the melanocytes respond
Right.
to sun because
Right.
it then darkens your skin to protect
To
you.
protect you, right. Okay.
And so if you don't need that protection,
It comes off.
they deactivate.
Right.
And so, but even still, if you take someone who's got very dark skin
Yeah.
and put them in that environment, they're going to need a lot more vitamin D
Right.
because they won't be getting anything from their UV, if
Got
that
it.
makes sense.
Right.
So
Okay.
this is where, like, where you live, I'll
Yeah.
tangent a little bit here, but
Right.
that's another one of the sciences. Even if you change location, if you've developed in, like, you grew up your first 12, 15 years in a country,
Yeah.
and then you move to the other hemisphere,
Yeah.
that'll mess with your light dark cycle, and it can take years
Right.
for your light dark cycle to readapt
Right.
to this new environment now.
Got it.
So there's a lot of things that need to be considered. Even exposomics is another part of the science as well,
Right.
which is, you know, the chemicals and toxins that we're exposed
Oh,
to
yeah,
as well,
yeah, yeah.
and how that responds with different people. So in order to solve this problem, it's not just about nutrition or exercise or
Right.
gut
Not just the eat, move, and sleep, which is a great start for 95% of the population.
Well, sometimes it's not even the place to start. Like,
Wow.
sometimes it's best to start with a person's mind. And then once they're making better decisions, the
There we
food
go.
will really click in.
Yeah.
So, but yes, the eat, move, sleep is going to be definitely helping us
Big
all.
part of it. Yeah.
But it's not the whole picture, because
No,
you could
no,
have a
it's
really
just the start.
poor relationship,
Right.
and you're stressed all the time,
Yeah.
eating the best foods possible,
So that's a social aspect.
exercising.
Right.
You still got a huge amount of stress in your system
Right.
that doesn't help your body recover,
Right.
because you're panicked about what's going to happen when you go home.
Right.
That's an important factor that, you know, we never talk about. You
Right.
know, we do in the psychology silo.
Yeah.
But we don't when we're talking food.
Yeah.
But it influences your food.
Yeah,
And
right.
X, Y, Z. So we've got to look at the whole
We've got
picture.
interdependence across all these layers, and like you said, like 15 or so.
Yeah.
It's above what do you call it? The health types, which is called the
The health
science.
types. Yeah.
Science.
Which is the science of phenotypology, essentially. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you go through all those layers, you're going to identify a pretty unique individual. So it is very specific, I guess is what I'm saying, when you do the pH360 analysis.
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
It's as far as specificity is concerned, there's not something that will give you such a comprehensive insight into you specifically.
Right.
There is I've not, in the 600 or so profiles that I've seen and worked with,
Right.
I've never seen someone with the same food list.
Right. Okay.
Because they're nutrient, like, you just change the colour of an eye,
Yeah.
you change, you know, how many greys someone's got, you
Right.
change someone's age,
Yeah.
and they're going to need something slightly different.
Amazing.
So, and it changes with you. So
Yeah.
you measure it once,
Yeah.
you then re-measure it again later.
Yeah.
Let's say you've dropped 20 centimetres off your waist.
Right.
Your body now is categorically different and expressing something different to what it was 20
So
centimeters
different
ago.
genes have been switched on, switched off.
Of course.
As that result of what decisions you were making in your mind.
And what you've eaten, and
right,
et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah.
So we then measure that change,
Yeah.
and then it will update. Well, now you can tolerate a lot more stress because your visceral fat isn't stressing you as much.
Right.
So, and this is where it'll stay up to date with you throughout your life,
Right.
rather than it being one genome test.
Yeah.
Which may not be relevant in 10
Right.
years,
Yeah.
or at least which part of it is relevant in 10 years. It will be
Right.
the same, so
Right.
it is still relevant.
Yeah.
But what do we need now? What's more likely to happen with age? Which of these
Right.
genes are turned on now
Right.
at this age?
Right.
This is what phenotyping allows us to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and just to sort of, we'll sort of land this, but you go online, you do a test. It's not even a swab DNA, wait a month type of thing. It's
No.
like you can go on now.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah,
do this,
so
do this measuring up and giving a whole lot of information on.
absolutely. And I would say, you know, obviously, Tommy, you've come and learned some stuff
Yeah.
with us as well. There's, you know, we've got a range of medical professionals right through to personal trainers,
Yeah.
all trained up in how to deliver this. I would
Yeah.
say you get far better results when you're working with an individual.
Yeah.
So great, you can grab a profile on like PH360, or you
Right.
can reach out to support@ph360.me.
Or you can reach out to me,
Oh yeah, of
and I
course.
can give you a
Tommy.
discount.
Excuse me. Yes, Tommy. Of course. Just
Oh,
in case
did you?
there's
Yeah.
in case there's thousands of
Thank you.
people. But yes, Tommy is your number one go-to.
There you go.
And then if there's overflow, he can direct you to good places.
Yeah, yeah.
But even
Thanks for the plug, mate.
getting some support, man, no problem. Sorry about that. I'm in world domination mode, not. So the yes. So essentially, I would really encourage you to reach out for more support.
Yeah.
When you get the profile, just the measures you can do at home, but
Yeah.
they'll be better if you're supported in doing it with like someone like yourself,
Right.
trained.
Yeah.
So yes, that'd be the way to go. And it's
Okay.
free, like, it's accessible, and
Right.
it's really it's cheaper than pretty much every other genetic test you'll do, but it actually gives you far more actionable information as well.
Right. And Matt Ryan, the CEO and founder. I mean,
Yeah.
quickly, just his story as we close out and see how this PH360 came about and what you're trying to do.
Sure.
Right.
So essentially, Matt was diagnosed. He was an osteopath physio,
Yeah.
working with elite athletes around the country. Bone issue.
Right.
And was told he had 10 years to live, essentially. That was 11 years ago now.
Wow.
And so he went travelling around the world for anyone who could do something,
Right.
and found our Chief Medical Research Officer now, Dr. Alberto Garoli, who'd been developing with a bunch of scientists for quite a while, a practitioner tool that could really get into the personalisation of things.
Right.
And essentially Matt is a fantastic visionary, and he's the health futurist for companies like Bupa, and he's worked with
World Health with the UN, I think.
He's done some speaking at World UN,
Right.
also US government,
military?
US Army. Yeah,
Right.
that's right. So his vision, and he essentially said we need to make this actually accessible to the whole population.
Right.
And so he still works very closely over the last 15 years with the scientific team, which is an international group,
Right.
to bring PH360 to where it is right now. It's at probably 6% of its capacity of what it can do.
Right.
But when you get into the app and actually see what it can do,
Yeah.
it is better than anything else out there right
Apps on
now.
the phone.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the intuitiveness, it'll actually give you prompts in language that's designed for your brain. It'll
Right.
tell you what to do. And so everything is about health without thinking. So that someone like you,
Right.
Tommy, can
Yeah.
say, right, this is going to be your virtual assistant.
Yeah.
I'm going to support you make the big, hard behavioural changes. I'm going
Right.
to bring this information together.
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing it with information that's exactly right for you.
Right.
Not just, what worked for me,
Yeah.
or what worked for this bloke over here.
Yeah.
It's what's actually right for you.
Right.
And then the really important thing is that no one is wrong in all of this.
Yeah.
As far as keto is right for a particular type of person
Right.
at a particular time.
Oh, God. That's
Paleo, it's
Yeah.
all right
Vegan
for
even,
for a
right.
particular person
Yeah.
at a particular time.
Right. And it's your time.
Yeah. And so the mission is to end chronic disease and pain by the year 2050.
Right.
And in order to do that, we've got to recognise, we've got to essentially start with, we're in a world now in 2050 with no disease.
Yeah.
What have we done to get there?
Right.
And so we reverse engineered that, or the team did originally.
Yeah.
I've been involved with them and leading their education now for the last 5 years.
Okay.
Essentially what we're doing is saying, right, we've got to recognise that everyone actually needs something different.
Yep.
And everyone will need something different in different moments of time.
Right.
So how do we create technology
Yep.
that can help do that? Because we
Yep.
can't just go out and educate everyone, because
Yep.
no one does that. No
Yep.
one does anything.
Yeah.
We've got to help them do it without thinking.
Right.
And so this PH360 is now an interactive application that over the next year is just going to become the most incredibly comprehensive app, whether it be tracking your fitness and then telling you what foods to have now, specifically down to the micronutrients.
Even to where you are in the world at that time?
Exactly, like for lunch and how that's changed post-exercise.
You should be having a lamb souvlaki for lunch.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so that level of intuition or intuitiveness is very, very important so that you can actually just get on with your day and just know that you're doing the right thing.
Right, because someone else is doing the thinking for you to help you make those decisions that are best for you to optimize. Well, even if optimize to be at your healthiest state. I mean, you could even be sick and you start going and taking on PH360, which is in effect what Matt did.
Yeah.
He went research and found out what was going to stop him from dying from this disease. To then go even further and go from then good to great, which is like the exact program that I'm currently rolling out and piloting right now. The basis for it is PH360.
Yeah.
Right, and a lot of the other things we do around digital health tech and so on that you and I have discussed, that can integrate beautifully to monitor from a telemetry point of view, like the Formula One race car that most of our execs are like, are racing around the track, but they want to do the Le Mans, not the short race, and they don't want to blow an engine for sure.
Yeah.
Right, so how do we help them do that? And so PH360, I don't know anything else that comes near it. You can do the DNA tests and swabs, and then you can't actually intellectualize those to what actions do I change each day, which is why I found PH360 a bit of a mind blow to find, and where it's headed is amazing.
Well, and the data set we have behind it, the people that are behind it as well, is an incredibly heart-based company.
Heart-based as in
it's actually looking out for the best of humankind, and it's governed by the Ultimate Human Foundation, which is a not-for-profit.
Right.
So everything essentially goes back into the development of how we can get this out, how we can make it more affordable, how we can make it better.
Right.
And so essentially everything needs to be founded in who you are and what's going to make your body healthy.
Right.
And because so many people are disconnected because of that sympathetic drive, it's just saying, I don't know what's really right for me because I'm just going this way.
I'm just surviving.
I'm surviving.
The best way I know how at the moment.
This is about, and we get this comment all the time, people have been searching for their health for the last 30 years about, I've finally nailed out what I need to do.
Right.
They'll do their profile and it'll be exactly what they're doing.
Wow.
Because it's putting the lens.
They did it by trial and error.
Exactly.
Right.
So it just cuts through all of that, and it's saying, hey, just walk through with this lens.
Yeah.
And just see how your body feels in 6 weeks.
Right, 6 weeks. Give it 6 weeks.
Exactly. And 12 weeks probably for more diplomats because there's a full blood cycle that's involved with that, which helps. But some bodies will feel the difference in a couple of weeks. But to really, it's a lifelong thing, is to understand how different you are and what your body
needs. You need at least
needs.
3 months to take in all account.
Yeah, which would be a great start.
Right, great start.
Yeah, and essentially there's always avenues. There'll always be a reason if something's still not triggering for you, something's not working for you.
Or you're changing. You could be changing location. You could be changing, right?
Exactly. And it's looking at that comprehensively, which is essentially what you're able to do.
Yep.
And what we support you with as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, it's been great. Thanks for coming out.
I love it. It's been awesome to talk about this.
Yeah. No, I mean, God, we could talk on this for days and weeks, right? But I think enough to get people an understanding of, looking at genetic genomes, genotypes, phenotypes, what they mean. And most importantly, what was fascinating for me is how we're only ever using a certain number of these software packages called genes, and you get to control which ones you can change through mindset, making certain decisions, but you need the information to do that. And that's where PH360 just comes in, slots in beautifully with the artificial intelligence and the algorithms and everything, all the work that's been done to say, for you, now that we've measured you up and you've got your hair color and size of your elbow diameter, etc., this is what's going to be the best for you based on all the information we had.
Yep.
And I think it's just awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. No, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Alrighty. So thanks, team. Any other final questions there, Anne? Ban industrial farming?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Quality of food is definitely
a big step.
The next big step.
There's no such thing as artificial intelligence.
Okay, all right. So we'll need to understand that one in a subsequent
and
one.
probably to qualify that, this is augmented intelligence is what we're using with PH360.
Right, what does that mean?
It's essentially, it's enhancing our ability to calculate things quicker.
Right.
So we know, like we can do 10,000 correlations of
Yeah.
a body
Yeah.
in 30 seconds on a computer. It's augmenting our
Wow.
intelligence,
Right.
as opposed to the computer thinking for itself.
Right.
So, and that's an important differentiator when we're
Right.
talking about this, is it'll then take feedback
Yeah.
and then say, oh, I need to, like, if this parameter meets this,
Yeah.
then I can calculate that and that'll be the output next time.
Right.
That's something that we've coded,
Yeah.
and so that's still augmented.
Right.
It's not the computer thinking for itself yet.
Right.
And so that's an important thing, is that's what PA360 is all about.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Today. Okay. Some other stuff coming up. Pete, you're going to get your chance when we come to New Zealand in a couple of weeks' time. Looking forward to that and doing an FB Live. And geez, we might even get Pete and Cam in the same room. That could be interesting. So, or on the same call. All right.
great.
Thanks again, Cam.
Awesome, mate.
All right,
Thank
mate.
you.
Thank you.
Well done, Tommy.
All
Great
right.
work.
Thank you. All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Remember, enjoy life right here, right now, today. I even get reminded about this today, occasionally. And we'll see you on the next FB Live. Mindful Monday done. We'll see you tomorrow. We've got Anne Shivers joining us from Australia. We'll actually be in the same location for that one as well. Catch you next one, guys. Bye.